Alright, so we're back. This is SP again. And this time I'm hitting you with something a little different. I felt like doing a kind of a retrospective on what really got me into firearms and like survivalist stuff and like pastoralism, perhaps a little bit of that, farming, perhaps a little bit of that. I guess you would have to go back to the year of 2008. 2007 and 2008 were very eventful years in my life. I was going from middle school to high school around that time. And I was, I picked up aluminum cans on the side of the road. I saved up money. I walked people's dogs for money. I mowed lawns, saved up all the money I could get one like a couple of months during the summer, and I bought an Xbox 360 because that was the hip console at the time. All my friends had one, and I got which COD was popular at the time. I forget which one was popular at the time, but I want to say it was World at War. But I just remember I'd go over to like one of my friends' house, and we would just stay up day and night playing the zombies, the first zombies on World at War. Back when it was basically just an unlockable level. Kino der Toten, I think it was what it was. Or that might be the Black Ops one. It might be Nacht der Untoten. Yeah, it was Nacht der Untoten. Okay. Yeah, that was the World at War zombies. We would play that. We'd play the Verrückt. That one was really spooky. Dries was great. We just had a fun time with that. We played so much of that. And one day, the same friend and I was, we went to the same school or whatever, and he was like, hey, I got this new game. I'm really psyched about it. It's been advertised everywhere, which I didn't have any clue about at the time, but he was like, yeah, it's called Fallout 3, and it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And he like hyped it up to an extent that I had never heard of, because I hadn't played any like RPGs at this point. Like I still hadn't played Oblivion. I still hadn't played Morrowind, any of those. I hadn't played Fallout 2 or Fallout 1 because I was like 1 when those games came out. Or I think, I'm not sure. I know they came out in the 90s and I wasn't old enough to play them. I need to play them. Like that'd be an interesting video if I play fucking Fallout 1 or 2. But back to what I was saying, so I was excited. My friend was. We both pre-ordered Fallout 3, and it came in. It was at I want to say it was either a Blockbusters. We ordered it at. It was either a Blockbusters. Blockbusters was still around, or it was maybe a Hastings. I forget which. It was either one of those two great old stores, and I really miss both of them. It sucks they're both gone. But we pre-ordered them, and we were there midnight because I think it released on a Thursday, I want to say. And I just stayed home from school the next day. I was so fucking excited because it looked like nothing we'd ever seen before. And I took that game and I put it in my 360, and they were right. It was incredible. It was nothing like I'd ever seen before at that point. Because I hadn't played Oblivion. I hadn't played Morrowind. This is my first RPG, and it just blew me away. Like shit your pants level of, I can't believe this exists. But I spent so much time playing that. If I remember right, it came out in November, I want to say. And Thanksgiving break, besides Thanksgiving, I just stayed in my room fucking playing Fallout 3. Because this is a point in time when the internet is around and is a thing, obviously, in 2008 and 7. But nobody's, like, looking up game Wikipedia articles telling you where stuff is. Now, maybe it existed, but I didn't think to do that at that time. Of course, I didn't have a smartphone at that time either. I don't think smartphones were they around in 2008? I don't know. But I remember just insanely enjoying looking around for every bit of content I could in Fallout 3. I love the aesthetics. I love the fucking 50s Cold War bullshit aesthetics. I love that. I could take or leave the 40s music. I mean, I didn't mind it, and I've slowly grown to like it more and more because it's associated. I associate it just with Fallout now, and it makes me happy because of that. But it something to do with the aesthetics, and I know like none of the guns are technically correct in that game because there's some goofy elements, but good God, they were a lot better than Fallout 4. And if I ever can find a Norinco Hunter that's not overpriced, and what a Norinco Hunter is, it is a kind of a more sloped Galil style milled receiver, essentially Chinese Sega, if I had to describe it. That basically you can lop the stock off of, weld a Galil hinge mechanism to, add you'd have to fabricate your own to get the proper Chinese Type 93 Fallout look. You'd have to fabricate your own thicker top cover, and then do the trigger guard modification. It has to have a bigger magazine catch, and then you'd have to do the RPD charging handle, so you'd have to lop off the charging handle and weld a RPD charging handle on. And then you'd essentially have to bolt RPD handguards on it, essentially, and add a support for the gas tube and a different style of almost 74 style bayonet lug. But you could do that, and you could have a legit real-world Type 93. I think there's a Forgotten Weapons video on when somebody's actually built, and it runs. And I'd love to do that. If I've ever have just excess funds for this channel, that will happen. And I won't be able to show it on YouTube, obviously, because they really hate doing anything with like disassembling and assembling guns because they want everyone to like be ignorant and accidentally like not know what they're doing with guns and hurt themselves or someone. God forbid anyone, actually glean knowledge off anything, but that's not going to get into that. But back into it, I just remember the Chinese assault rifle. Good God, I fucking love that gun. And and then my granddad's war stories from Korea with the PPSH submachine gun and how he found it to be an amazing weapon because he was in the Korean War in the 50s and encountered one that he liberated from a Chinese soldier that was incapacitated, most likely. And he loved that gun, and that kind of already put a positive idea of like Eastern Bloc firearms in my mind. And then Fallout 3 with the Chinese assault rifle really just drove that aesthetic home for me. I love the slower rate of fire of that gun in the game. It had way more damage than the HK 53 or the R91, which is what it's called in the game. But it's essentially a simplified looking 308, or no, it's not a 308. It looks like a 308, the magazine does, but it should have a slimmer magazine. That's one way the designers messed up. They took too much G3 inspiration. But for the lore, I could actually see like if like the U.S. government's teetering on bankruptcy, them going to stamp steel, cheap to manufacture design like the roller delayed blowback HK 53. But I love that gun too, but not as much as the Chinese assault rifle. Both of them were iconic though, and both of them should have been in Fallout 4. I don't know what kind of substances the designers of that game were doing, but a Lewis gun that had intercourse with an MG34 and a water-cooled Vickers, not a fucking Vickers, a water-cooled Maxim barrel, even though it's got the air-cool port from that gun is a nightmare. It needs to be in the garbage can of video game gun designs. I don't know. If you want something to look good in power armor, make a friggin' M2 Browning and put it like they did in 76. And that's like the only good thing I can say about 76 is that's what you want to have your power armor troops equipped with, because that's the whole point of power armor and the whole Chinese invasion thing is not really the armor it provides is secondary to it being able to have a normal soldier lift something like a minigun or like an M2 Browning. That would be a good example. Or and then the ammunition and the batteries needed to run those guns. The power armor. So basically, it makes a one-man lightly armored tank, and that was the whole concept. But yeah, that would have worked much better than trying to do that with that. That was not a good design choice. They should have just had the Chinese assault rifle and R91, Type 93 and R91 for retrospect, and their in-game lore names. But yeah, that game really drove it home, and then the whole just the atmosphere and this derelict, like ruined infrastructure you find yourself in, and even the metros, which I hated at the time. Now when I go back and play Fallout 3, or basically when I play it now, I use Tale of Two Wastelands because I love New Vegas a little bit more, and then having them both together to where I can just jump from back to forth worlds, and it kind of, I don't know, the lore's kind of iffy if you're going by like a straight up lore playthrough, but it's so fun that I can just make up a story around the character or whatever, going from DC to New Vegas and back and forth or whatever. But yeah, just the way everything in that game was, the ghouls, the super mutants, the 50s aesthetic with like the way people talk, and the people still trying to be classy despite the fact they're cannibals, and it's like 2277 and it's 200 years after a nuclear war. Just the whole aesthetics of the, I guess you could say the mid 2000s and up Fallout, before Fallout 4. There's just nothing going to be like it in video games. And, I sound like a boomer talking about like the first Doom or something, but it's really the same vibes I get from that. And that really led me into collecting guns, because the first gun I wanted, I saw that really interested me, because my uncle had one and I got to shoot it, was a Chinese SKS. It had the cool Chinese characters on the side. It had the folding spike bayonet. It had the dark lacquered chew wood stock and handguards. And it had the he had like a god awful scope mount that did not really work on the dust cover. Would not hold zero. But I loved the gun enough that when I turned 18, it was the first gun I bought. The first gun my dad ever bought me when I was learning to hunt and stuff was a single shot 410, which I still love and treasure that gun deeply, because it's my first gun. But the Chinese SKS was the first gun I bought for myself. I bought a Wasser shortly after it, but that's besides the point. A Chinese SKS, I love that gun. I did stupid stuff with it, like I put it in the Tapco stock for a while because that was trendy at the time, and I used the detachable magazines. The Tapco ones actually ran okay. I never had problems with those. Any of the metal ones or the other brands sucked and did not run at all. You still couldn't use stripper clips with the Tapco, so that still sucked. But yeah, and then shortly after that, I bought a Wasser, a 10, and it was a 1063. And it was a pretty well put together gun, and I loved it. And I shot so many rounds through that gun. Like, oh God, you could get, because I was working at just this horrible gas station truck stop at the time. And I was just using my funds from that to just buy 7.62 by 39 ammo, and I just had so much fun shooting that Wasser. And that's what really led me into the whole gun stuff. I got an AR shortly after that, got a Glock 17 shortly after that, and at the time also there was a lot of good movies coming out that had a lot of like realistic, gunplay was starting to get more realistic at the time. And yeah, just that mid 20 or early 21st century, I guess you could say we're still in the early 21st century, but you know what I'm talking about, the 2000s. that air of just stuff, media, just was so good compared to what we have now. And it's really sad how the creativity, I guess you could say, is just dropped off. But yeah, I don't know really what I'm going to call this video, but I'd love to do a little voiceover on a fucking slideshow, which is probably what I'll end up doing with this format. I just don't want to have a black box for you folks, but if it comes to that, it might be. But you know, depends on what kind of time I got with work and university picking back up. But yeah, that's the thing is just the aesthetics of New Vegas and 3. And I need to talk more about New Vegas, which I guess I could go ahead and just make this a long video and add New Vegas in, because New Vegas is probably the best game of all time. And I don't care how controversial that is. I will stand by that argument. On my old PC before it shit the bed and I lost all my information to the Steam account I had on that computer because I made it with an email back in like 2012 and, you know, never updated it and lost that email eventually and have no clue how to recover it or where it's at. But yeah, so this, I lost all those hours, but I had around 1,000 in New Vegas at that point. And that's not counting how much hours I put into it on an Xbox 360. I put like 700 on an Xbox 360 into it in vanilla. And then I ended up putting about 900 with mods and everything on my old computer. And then it crapped out. And then on my new one, I've already put another 200. So it's, yeah, it's probably... It's going to be it is the best game of all time, in my opinion. And I don't care if that is controversial. Like I said, the aesthetics, they're like 3, but times 10. Honestly, you got the cowboy vibe going on. You got the cyberpunk kind of futuristic thing going on, which Fallout does well, but 3 didn't really touch on enough, in my opinion. You got the, I guess it did. Yeah, I guess it did. But you got the, you know, the Legion and their like Roman aesthetics going on. You got the NCR and their like Vietnam War aesthetics going on and like all the corruption and shit going on with them, but that's another story. You got the, you know, the fiends causing problems and shitting everything up for normal people. And you got the cons, great cons living off in their canyon, brewing chems and selling them. Yeah, I mean, it's just, that game is such a just masterpiece. And what's sad is at the time, I like, and the story of that game is I pre-ordered that one as well and picked it up. I think and that one for sure was at a Hastings because I remember it came out around the same time 3 did, just in 2010 instead of 2008, I believe. That was when 3 came out. And same thing, I played New Vegas until like just a week unended on Xbox 360 until Thanksgiving that year. And then for 2 years straight, I pumped so many hours in that game on 360. And then when I got my gaming rig finally built, it was the first game I bought for it. And yeah, I played that game so much. All the mods for it were great. The community still talks about New Vegas a lot. And that's what I ought to tell you something. Is 4 is hardly ever brought up. 76 sometimes gets brought up, mainly because Zoomers are playing it and getting into Fallout for the first time. And then 3 gets talked about a little bit more than both of those. But New Vegas is by far the most talked about game still. And for good reason. The writing is just... everything is there. And honestly, it's sad because if they had, I don't know, like just 6 or 7 more months to work on that game and really put the finishing touches on it, it would be a masterpiece that it wouldn't even be questionable if it was the best game of all time. You know, it wouldn't even be up for debate. But unfortunately, they didn't. Bethesda made them hurry, and then Bethesda kind of ripped them off on some other stuff. But that's besides the point. But yeah, New Vegas, the weapons were great. You had the 308 Navy Grands, this machine, which is a special named one. That was a fantastic gun for that game. You had the brush gun in 4570, which was badass. You had the riot shotgun, which is like it's a kind of a fictitious version of the Chinese hawk shotgun, which is a real thing, and it looks vaguely similar. And yeah, you had all kinds of just the New Vegas is such a good game. I can't stress it enough. If you've not played it, it's a little bit clunky compared to today's games. In vanilla form, it doesn't have like a sprint button, for example. Although mods really just fix that. And honestly, if you're not playing on something you can mod nowadays, what are you even doing? So I'd suggest like Project Nevada be the first thing you put on New Vegas for a much better gaming experience if you're used to more modern games. But that's what really propelled me into firearms, I would say. That and then the cinema of the like late 2000s, mid to late 2000s. That and then, of course, my father and grandfather got me into hunting. And from then on. But, I could go back to the survivalist aspect of Fallout and why it was such an interesting thing. The idea of, you're in this hostile climate, right? And all these mutated animals, they do not like you. So you're out on, it's going to be tough. You're out on your luck. You gotta scavenge. You gotta plan. And it might not go your way. So you gotta kill animals and you gotta eat them like the mole rats and the mirelurks, which the mirelurks probably taste pretty good. Like, you imagine like a crab that weighs like 300 pounds, like how much like sweet crab meat you'd get out of it. It'd be friggin' fantastic. But yeah, that's the whole thing with Fallout 3 is it had, I don't know, and I know it didn't have a survivalist mode like a New Vegas does, but it had this vibe that survival really would be difficult in 3, like especially if it did have that mode. And I think that's the only thing it does better than New Vegas is perhaps the atmosphere. It is a little more grim. However, I will say this, if you go by like Fallout lore, the timeline on the East Coast doesn't make quite as much sense because in Fallout 3 it's 2277 and on the West Coast in 2277 the NCR has already got like 1 million citizens and then the Legion's already conquered like 3 states and then you have all these societies that are progressing much faster on the West Coast and on the East Coast you still have raiders living with like skeletons and diners and stuff. And I guess that you could argue the East Coast got way more hammered by nukes, and that's probably true. But they should at least have progressed a little more than where they're at. They should be like, I don't know, California in like the mid-2200s, perhaps. Not like California in 2190 or something like that. Which is how it's almost like on the West Coast, or on the East Coast in 2277. But yeah, if you haven't played either, I suggest giving both a chance. They're just mind-blowingly good games, and they influenced a lot of my firearm tastes, and why I like them so much. And I figured this would be a good video to tie into maybe some gaming content I plan to do in the future. Definitely won't be turning this into a gaming channel. If I do post, I might make a separate channel for that, but if I do post it here, it'll probably be infrequent. And that's just to keep the channel more oriented on firearms and homesteading and survival stuff, which is what I try to do as much as YouTube will allow me, because we live in censorship era, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, if you like the video, feel free to subscribe, and I will be producing more stuff. I got a lot of stuff planned for this year, as much as I can get in that work and university will allow. I got some interesting content coming up. I got some new guns coming in that'll be good to review. I got some hunting footage I'm editing, some fishing footage I'm editing. editing like a video on how to put together a proper hen coop if you want to like raise hens. I might even do one for a garage. So like if you people, urbanites that are stuck in the urban centers want to raise hens, it would be a good information for you to pick up on that. But yeah, so give like I said, feel free to subscribe. Check out my Patreon. I have it linked on some of my videos. I don't know if I'll link it here. Like I said, I'm a little bit on a schedule right now, but things are clearing out, and by April or May, I should have plenty of free time to put into the channel. Check out. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. I'm just getting over a little bit of some allergies. Yeah, check out the rest of the guys over at yacklebees.com if you want to see some cryptid shit. And, yeah. I actually have a cryptid encounter story. I'm going to be doing a similar format with this kind of thing coming up. And if you are still watching, it should be up in a week or two, or maybe less, depending on how I feel. But yeah, I will see you guys later, and good evening.